call the meeting to order. Tracy, you want to take roll call?
Commissioner Wire?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Phil?
Here.
Commissioner Waldner?
Here.
Mayor Denner?
Here. We have the agenda in front of us. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So approved. I'll second.
Any further comments or discussion on the agenda? Not hearing any. Tracy, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Wire?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Phil?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner?
Aye.
Mayor Denner?
Aye. We'll move down into appearances and acknowledgements. We'll go with item number 1. We have Selmer Hagan here to talk about the ordinance number 1405 concerns. If you want to come on up, Selmer.
Is this thing on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I have to wear a mask when I'm talking?
If you would, please.
Okay. I had my first experience with this ordinance on the 9th of July when all of a sudden half of the electricity in my house went off in different places, and I called and they couldn't come till the next morning. It was in the afternoon I called, so I had electric cords running all over my house. It looked like a construction outfit. But anyhow, when they came, I visited with them, and they gave me my first bits of information with regard to this ordinance since they put the wires underground in Madison. One of the things they told me right off the bat was that I was going to have to pay for it, which until that time I hadn't realized it. But anyhow, I didn't think that was too big a deal, but I was a little bit surprised. So they tried to find where the break was in my wire, and they figured their equipment wasn't working because they couldn't locate it. And they went to get new batteries, and I didn't see them when they came back, and I don't think they found out anything that day anyhow, because they told me to hire an electrician, which I did. And they came and they dug a trench in the alley where the wire went through. They went down 5 feet, and they couldn't go any further, and they couldn't reach the wire. So they talked with the city's electrical department, and they have been visiting back and forth on this thing ever since. But the thing is, I know that that's not a standard distance to put the electric wire down for the house is 6.5 feet. They put it down 6.5 feet. As far as I know, they didn't have a sand base or any conduit in it. To more complicate it, they took my electric wires and ran them through the same hole as a 7,200 watt main line. I was told should those two get together, my house would burn down in seconds. So I think it was a pretty faulty job of the installation in the first place. The ground there is rocky. On ground level, it's like rocks the size of potatoes. Down where the wire is, the rocks are 6 inches in size, they told me. And I think having rocks that big, that uneven, and not much dirt, when you disturb it running through, I suppose as it settles, there's no surprise at all that the wire would break. At least that's the way I would look at it. Now, they've been discussing what they should do about it. They haven't talked with me personally, but I get a little feedback now and then. They said that they wanted the city to turn off the electricity at the transformer so that they could get down there and work on the wire, and they won't do it. I don't know exactly, the only reason that they wouldn't do it is that they don't want to rewire it, I'm sure. What they want to do is have somebody come into my yard, dig up my yard and part of my fence, and then run the wire from my backyard across the alley and across my back lot to the transformer. Well, that's all if the city was doing it, there'd be very little expense if they let them do the other way. But I've been told that to get somebody to come into Madison with one of those underground machines would cost me $1,400 before they started working. I've been informed that they charge $20 a foot, and I suppose it'd be 75 feet or so over there with another $1,500. I also have to pay the electricians for digging that hole in the middle of the alley and now coming back and digging another hole and doing the splicing. So, I think most of the jobs will run $400 or $500, but this, with all this extra stuff, if I was going to pay for it, I think what it amounts to is the city electricians want me to pay the whole bill, cover up the holes so nobody will be able to see the evidence of how the other people did the wiring. Now, when they let this contract, they let it out so that the contractor was free of liability after 2 years. It's 5 years now. But I would think if underground wiring is so much better than having it out in the open, that it surely could be warranted for longer than that. And now, you hear on the TV all the time now, these oversee committees where they're overseeing everything all the time. Did the city electricians oversee the putting in of these wires? Did they see how mine was installed when it was installed? I seriously doubt that they did. I would think they would have done something about it. But it just saved them running another wire in the same area at the same time. So this is part of the problem I have. Madison is a town of a lot of senior citizens, and I happen to be one of them. You can't see me through this mask, but I'm working on 86 years old right now, and I have enough money saved up that I can pay for my own stuff till I'm 90. Repairing this would be about $4,000. When I make $1,150 a month on Social Security, that's a third of my annual income on Social Security to pay for this rotten job of putting in these wires. So that doesn't really please me too much either. I think that, I've stated that I think it was improperly put in, and that is probably illegal, but I don't know that for a fact. But I think utilities properly serving the citizens of Madison should be treating all citizens the same. And when you don't know how these wires were installed in each house, I know one of the commissioners, I don't know who you are, so it doesn't make any difference, but I understand one of them already had about a $2,000 bill. And I know others have had $400 and $500 bills. And I think an ordinance for utilities, it's nice to have it like the water, where so much you use, you pay that according to your level that you're on. But this is just completely crazy. And my problem is with the kind of ground that the wire's in, unless it's conduit, it would happen again probably. So I think that this whole thing was just a fiasco. I understand that they have formed a separate company for the electrical department, and they're going to use the profits from that for paying off other areas of the budget for the city. Is that true? If it is, it doesn't make any difference. You know what I'm talking about anyhow. If that's true, I think that's a crying shame. I think that they should pay for the electricity that they use rather than paying them to raise money to pay for some other expense. I think you should budget things for what they're from and what they're for. But anyhow, that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of my complaint. I'd be willing to answer any questions, or if you have any comments to give me, I'd be willing to hear that too.
I got a question. Brad, do they normally put the secondary and the primary together when they do this?
Prior to my coming here, when they first started the upgrade projects, they had to make a decision. There's two different ways that you can do it by the National Electric Safety Code, which is a code that does the underground above 600 volts. And there's two different ways, deliberate separation and random separation. And they chose the random separation, which allowed them to put the wires together and run them, at the same depth as the primary, which has a minimum area of roughly 42 inches. We try to keep it at 48 to keep it a little safer. And there, I don't know, this was installed before I got here, so I don't know, that exact install and who was watching it or who was doing what, but the upgrade project, since I've been here, we have one of our electric linemen with the contractor the entire time that they're working. So we do have supervision on everything that is done inside the city of Madison with one of the electric linemen. But yes, they chose to go one of the options, which was random separation, and that's what they chose. And that was done before I got here. That was probably done back in 2005 or 4 or somewhere there when they first started the upgrade projects.
Did you say that it was put in between 42 and 48 inches?
That's the minimum. That by regulation, we have to be at least that deep. We can go deeper, but we have to be at least that deep. You can't be shallower.
Well, I understand some of them are. But this one is beyond that by quite a ways. At 6.5 feet, you got 78 inches. That's quite a bit more than 48.
Why would they have to go that deep at the alleyway? Chad, can you answer that?
No, I don't know.
Brad, can you answer that?
I don't know. I wasn't there at the time when they bored it. They may have ran into something that caused them to go that deep, a rock someplace along the lines where they had to go that deep.
It's all rocks.
I know it's all rocks, but there are also bigger rocks that they can't go around or through. They may have had to pull back and go deeper to get past a rock or something. I don't know. We'd have to ask, and then again, being 5 years ago, they may not remember what the reason was for them being that deep. But they generally try to stick pretty close to that 4-foot depth, as close as they can.
Selmer, where do you live at?
Pardon?
Where do you live at in town here? Just out of curiosity, like south side of town?
I didn't hear what you said yet.
I asked, where do you live in town?
Where do I live in town?
Yep.
Right across from the old Washington School, right on the west side of the road.
Okay.
435 North Washington.
Right east of the condos.
Is there any further comment for Selmer?
Because I would think if this was put in a legitimate depth, there'd be no reason for the electrical department not to want to take and put it back just the way it was. So I really doubt that that's the total answer on that one. But I just want to let you know that I do not feel responsible for paying that bill. I think that's absolutely a ridiculous bill in the first place. And I think that I don't think it was a good job of installing it. Especially where they knew it was rocks there all the way, and not using conduit or anything seems really just beyond the pale with me.
Brad, how would something like that be fixed in a normal situation? How would that line normally be fixed?
Generally, you dig them up, you find the fault, and then you repair the fault with a splice.
Sure. But we haven't been able to find the fault on this?
They have found it.
They did find it?
They found it at 6.5 feet deep,
Okay.
because the electrician only had a machine to go 5 feet down. But they had their searcher thing, whatever you call it, to look for the wires, and they could tell where it is, so they know where it is. But it's be one big hole in the alley to get that fixed. But
It's my understanding the person that you got hired does not want to work next to the primary, correct? Selmer, I've
well,
had
you can't.
discussion.
No, he would not dig. He would not dig a hole next to a 7,200 volt line because he might hit it.
Right. Unless it was turned off.
Well, yeah. But
So you still don't have this line fixed, correct?
no, I still have they put the wire on top of the ground the day after it happened. And I asked them, can I drive on that? And they said, well, you shouldn't, but they put it right across the front of both my garage doors. So I waited a couple of weeks and never used my garage, and I finally decided, I'm not going to wait forever, I'm going to use my garage. So I did, and I have since. So it does get driven on.
So it's just temporary.
If it gets
It's
broke
just
again.
temporary above ground.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening.
Yep,
If I could answer any questions any other time, let me know.
you bet. Thank you, Selmer.
You bet.
We're going to skip down, we're going to skip the Lewis and Clark presentation for a couple minutes. We're going to move down to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any comments or discussion? Not hearing any. Tracy, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner. Mayor Denner.
Aye. We'll go down into unfinished business. Item number 1, 5:30 p.m. hearing upon application for sales of alcoholic beverages, transfer of retail on-sale liquor license, Kyle Ackerman Sportsman's Steakhouse and Lounge to Par 4 Tavern LLC, Par 4 Tavern. Did you have anything on that, Tracy?
Simple transfer, paperwork will be heading out this week, so Carson can get his license back.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak? Not hearing any. I will close the hearing and we'll move down into item number 1 under new businesses. Approve the application for sale of alcoholic beverages, transfer of retail on-sale liquor license, Kyle Ackerman Sportsman Steakhouse and Lounge to Par 4 Tavern LLC, Par 4 Tavern.
So moved.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. Any further comments, discussion? Not hearing any. You want to take roll call vote, Tracy?
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner. Mayor Denner.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, guys. Now
Thank you,
we'll,
Carson.
you're done. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Yep. Now we'll move back up into our second appearance, item number 2, Troy Larson, Executive Director, Lewis and Clark Regional Water Systems 60 MGD expansion. Did you want to start, Chad, or?
Well, I can say a few words, just
Okay.
very brief. No, I can say it. I invited Mr. Larson here. It's been quite some time since there's been a presentation for the City Commission. Oftentimes those coincide with some significant event, if you will, that may uniquely affect the City of Madison. It's been pretty calm recently. There are some different things that might be coming up on the horizon that Troy's going to talk about, and also just give you a general update. We will continue to work on some of these items, of course, with Mr. Lawrence as Utility Director, and the Utility Commissioner, Mr. Wire, and Mayor Dennard in particular, as to avoid a quorum, of course, to talk about issues in a working group where with greater detail. But then the commission, of course, will always be involved with major decisions and approvals, of course. But with that, I invited Mr. Larson here to give an update, and I won't hold things up any longer.
Thank you.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Mayor, members of the commission. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Look forward to a good discussion. I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And if you're like me, if you wait till the end to ask a question, you're going to forget. So feel free to interrupt me and ask questions along the way to make this productive as possible. Page 1 is introduction. You can see we've got a lot to cover, and I want to try to not take up your whole night, so I will whip through this as quickly as possible. Next page, please. See, Chuck, the newspaper man, is here, and Chuck knows the first rule of journalism is don't bury the lead. So that's why this is first. This is the main reason I'm here, is to talk about the expansion from 45 million gallons to 60. Lewis and Clark, the current capacity, we have 20 members. A member is either a city or rural water system because we're a wholesale provider of water. The system currently has reserve capacity of 45 million gallons, meaning if you add all our 20 members together, that's how much they've reserved. Madison is 1 million gallons of that. But the federal government, fortunately in their wisdom, allowed us to put the pipe in the ground at a larger diameter to allow for future expansion. So the pipeline is already bigger, treatment plant footprint's bigger, so that we can expand to 60 million gallons. So there's already a lot of costs already being covered in terms of an expansion by the federal government and the state dollars and the member dollars. But there's still a good chunk of money that the members need to put in if they want to participate in this expansion. Each member needs to decide voluntarily whether they want to participate in this expansion, and they have to cover 100% of the cost. Madison's estimated cost share, and I want to stress this is an estimate, is $2.46 million for an additional 552,000 gallons of reserve capacity. That would be on top of Madison's 1 million gallons. And I want to stress, I'm not here to sell you one way or another. It doesn't matter to Lewis and Clark one bit whether Madison takes this capacity or not. There are a lot of other members that are hoping Madison and others don't take capacity because they want more. And so there would be members jumping for joy if Madison decides not to participate. So I'm just here to try to provide as much information as possible so you can make an informed decision. And I don't think this is part of the presentation, but should I hand? Sure, I can. Okay. So what you're getting now is the engineer's estimate for that expansion, and you'll see the lower right-hand number, and sorry, Mike, you're not seeing this, but the estimated cost for the members is $97 million. And you can see Madison's share again is about $2.4 million. And so this is going to change. But this is the most likely scenario we have. And so I'll talk more about the timing, but just wanted to let you know where these numbers are coming from. So if ultimately it costs us more or less than $97 million to complete this expansion, that will, of course, impact Madison's cost share. So a question you will have is, well, if we decide to participate, when would we need to pay this? Our best estimate is that the expansion construction will start in 7 to 8 years with the first item on that list. If you look at the very top, it's the second gravity thickener and a 6 solids contact basin. That SCU stands for solids contact basin. So about $13.2 million. That's the first thing that would need to be constructed in 7 to 8 years. There's 2 scenarios, and I can't tell you what scenario is going to hold true. One scenario is the members have to pay that, and then we wait roughly 10 years to pay the rest. In other words, we just do that one thing, and then we do the rest later. Another scenario is once we start that work, we just keep on rolling. So I can't tell you when you would need all of it. And I'll try to not get in the weeds too much, but the reason for that timeline is we currently have 4 solids contact basins. We need a 5th one to get up to 45 million gallons a day, part of our authorized system. We need a 6th one for the expansion. The engineers have told us we can save a significant amount of money if we build the 6th one the same time we're building the 5th one. That's what's driving this timeline, about the 7 to 8 years. Not that we need more water in 7 to 8 years. It's to try to save a significant amount of money on that second solids contact basin and that gravity thickener. So any questions on that in terms of the timeline and what's driving the timeline? Okay. So what we're doing, what I'm hoping to get from you tonight is Lewis and Clark is conducting what I would call a straw poll. Straw poll is just informally, do you think you are interested or not? No commitments. And so far, we've heard from 15 members that yes, informally we're in. And Chad, before giving me an answer, wanted to have this opportunity for this discussion. So I'm not asking for any formal action, but I would like some consensus whether you think in terms of the straw poll that you want to participate or not. The board of directors has a consensus, and they will formalize this after the first of the year. But the consensus at our last meeting is to set January 1, 2022 as a deadline where you need to make the official decision whether you're in or out. So you have roughly 15 months to make that final decision. So this is the first of probably multiple meetings and discussions. But again, the straw poll is totally separate from that official decision. So part of this discussion of whether you're in or out on expansion has to do with selling water and the opportunity to sell water to other members or non-members. That's later in the discussion, so in hindsight, I should have probably packaged those together a little better. So we're going to talk about selling water a little later, but are there questions about the expansion? I went through that really quick, and this is the main reason I'm here, so I don't want to shortchange our discussion on that. Is it all clear as mud?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we did talk about this at a meeting earlier today with Commissioner Wire and Utility Director Larson, and in that January 1st of 2022 will likely be a time frame when there's like a formal agreement that will have to have been approved by that time or not. And I know that this is just a lot of information. We just started here really, and even in our meeting earlier today, we really started to get some more detailed information to Mr. Wire and Mr. Lawrence and such. But I think we'll start to get into this much more, and you'll be in a better position, all of you city commissioners, to answer these questions going forward. The straw poll, I think by using that term, Troy may be alluding to the fact that it's not a binding poll. The board would just like to get a feel of how many members are wanting to participate in this expansion, to the asset that we have before us and the opportunity we have before us, which a little bit of editorial comment, which probably will not come again with an opportunity to get this Lewis and Clark water as part of the program. So whether or not you're probably not in the best position to give a firm answer now. Maybe Mr. Wire is a little bit better, but we only had a meeting a little bit before this meeting to talk about that. So.
Jeff, do you know what it cost us to initially get that $1 million?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
That's later in my presentation. Hold on.
One of the things, as Mr. Larson is looking that up, one of the distinguishing parts to that, and again, this will be covered in this discussion, is the city is a 10% share member in this. The states are a 10% share, and the federal government is an 80% share. So keep in mind that this expansion will be 100% of the members. So it's got, just keep that in mind as you start to hear this number of the original cost. So it's somewhat of an apple and an orange, but it's still money the city has contributed towards the project. So.
On page 22 of my presentation, Madison paid just over $2 million for the 1 million gallons a day. And so by comparison, you're now looking at about 2.5 million for 552,000, right? And so to Chad's point, your original cost share, you paid 10%. 90% cost share came from the feds in the states. And so this expansion is 100% at the cost of the members. But good question, good question.
So the $2 million was our 10%.
Original, correct.
Okay.
And that's already been paid.
Is it 10 or 3, Chad?
We have of the allocated capacity we have 3% of the current capacity, which is 45 million gallons. That's the 3%. The 10% is the cost share
Okay.
of the project. That's where the members pay 10%, but of that, we paid 3. Is that correct, Troy? I think that's right. So
Yep.
3% of the 10%.
So going back then, before I move on to the project membership, I didn't know this until talking to Brad today, but apparently in historic or recorded time, Lake Madison has went dry 3 times, which I did not know that. And you never know when we're going to have a severe drought. Essentially, as I understand it in talking to folks earlier today, is Madison views this as insurance. You may or may not need another 520 or 552,000 gallons of capacity in the next 20 years. But if we have a prolonged drought and you don't have it, you would pay quadruple for that. And Chad alluded to the fact that this likely will be the last bite at the apple. What he was referring to is we have looked at an expansion of Lewis and Clark beyond 60 million gallons, beyond what we're talking about, and the cost would be astronomical in terms of another treatment plant, parallel pipelines, and so it appears to be impractical unless we have significant cost share from the feds and the states again, essentially going back and recreating Lewis and Clark again. So I would humbly suggest this most likely your last bite of the apple in terms of additional capacity for Lewis and Clark. So, Brad, was there anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of insurance and having enough water and drought?
The only thing we talked about was, and we'll talk about that when we get to the sales.
Okay.
Because that's where that really comes in.
Gotcha.
We're in the Goldilocks zone as far as water is concerned, with the number of rural water systems around us that are all interconnected that can feed Madison and vice versa. We're in the Goldilocks zone, so just keep that in mind that we're in a good spot.
Location, location, location. We have any realtors here? Yeah, you're sitting really well. All right, so we're going to come back to expansion a little bit as we talk about selling water. But Chad also wanted me to talk about, for the sake of some of the newer commissioners here, a little bit about Lewis and Clark. So page 4, just as a recap of our members, we're a wholesale provider of water. We don't sell water to individual homes and businesses. So Lewis and Clark was created by these 20 cities and rural water systems that said, hey, we got water issues coming up in the future, let's band together and create Lewis and Clark. And so you'll see the membership there. Page 5, I'm not going to read through these. I understand you had a chance to review this presentation in advance, and I'm sure it was good nighttime reading, cure any insomnia you may have. But I do want to recognize Chad Comas, who served on our board of directors since 2006. He is on the executive committee and just is a very well-respected, well-spoken member of our board. And so I want to thank Chad for his service and thank you for appointing him, because he is a very valuable member of our board of directors. And in case you didn't know, each seat, every member has an equal seat at the board. So Centerville's vote counts as much as Sioux Falls' vote. In terms of operations, just briefly, we ended our fiscal year September 30th, and we ended the fiscal year by selling just over 6.6 billion with a B gallons, a daily average of 18.1 million gallons, an increase of 6.4% from last year. We've seen increases every year that we've been in operation, which was 2012. 2012 is when we first started selling water to the members that were connected at that time. We have 16 and a half staff members, 3 are administrative staff, and 13 and a half is a custodian, if you're curious. We have 13 and a half that actually work at the plant and in the distribution system. Our water loss is a remarkably low 0.35%. I won't ask Brad to review what Madison's is, but anything in 5% or lower is considered outstanding, and our water loss is 0.35%. So that's tremendous. We have very soft water, about 9 grains per gallon of hardness. You'll see that there's an annual water taste test in Pierre every year. I'm on page 8 now. And water produced by Lewis and Clark has won first or second the last 5 years. So it's a very high quality water that is award winning, and it's not just us saying that. Page 9, that's a picture of our treatment plant in the distance. We have 3 lime drying beds. Lime is a byproduct of the treatment process. It gets dried out and has agriculture applications. And the middle drying bed we need to make some improvements to, and so that contract was awarded last month, and you can see that sludge is being removed in that photo. So that's the other 2 lime drying beds have already been improved. This one's in the works. So now at page 10, this is a footprint of the system. To put it in perspective, this is the size of Connecticut, our service territory. And you can see the blue, solid blue, is the pipelines that are operational. And you can see where we're constructing right now is the pipeline between Beersford and Sioux Center. We're also building a water tower just outside of Beersford. And we're also building a 16 million gallon collector well down by Vermilion. And I'll talk a little more about that. But again, this just gives you an idea of the construction underway. Construction currently underway, we have 5 projects that are combined 54.1 million. I'm now on page 11. 3 of the contracts have to do with that pipeline between Beersford and Sioux Center. And then, as I mentioned, we have the water tower and the collector well. Page 12, picture of the pilings going in. These are steel pilings that will serve as the foundation, part of the foundation system for the water tower just outside of Beersford. And again, I'm going through this pretty quick. Stop me if you have any questions. Pages 13 and 14 show some pictures of that collector well. Most of our, I should say most, we have currently 11 vertical wells. Just, I assume, Brad, you have vertical wells here? They're just
Yes.
standard vertical wells. A collector well is much more complicated and produces a lot more capacity. Think of it as an umbrella that's upside down, that's been fully extended. So a vertical with a lot of these wires going out. In our case, these are laterals. You can see that picture where the circles are on page 13. So a collector well, instead of just having a single pipe that goes down and sucks out water, you have this vertical, but then you have these laterals that go out horizontally. And that's the screens that pull in the water. So instead of just having one source, you're pulling water from like 12 different laterals. And so most of our vertical wells produce about 3 million gallons a day. This collector well is expected to produce 16 million gallons a day. So it's much more expensive, but you get a lot more water out of it. And this is expected to be operational by the spring of 22. So it's a over 2-year construction window that we have on that. So spring of 2022. The next page, 15, shows some of the pipeline construction between Beersford and Sioux Center. That's 24-inch diameter pipeline. When these 5 projects I referred to are done, Lewis and Clark will be 85% completed. And based on recent federal funding levels, we expect Madison to be connected in late 2025. And I want to stress that's all dependent on federal funding levels, late 2025. So we're about 5 years away from hopefully delivering water to Madison. Now, in the meantime, you may be saying, well, hold on, I thought we were getting water from Lewis and Clark. You're getting water via what we're calling a wheeling plan, which has been working very well. South Dakota provided $8.7 million in federal funding advances for design and construction of this wheeling plan, which involved cooperation with Minnehaha Community Water Corp and Big Sioux. They also had some low interest and grant components to make their interconnection. Page 17, the reason this wheeling plan came about is the state of South Dakota wanted to help address Madison's water needs, but wanted to figure out a way to not advance us the $17 million for the middle 32 miles of pipeline. And you'll see on page 18, this is the map of the wheeling plan. You can see we have some pipeline way down to the south that goes up to Crooks. That's 5 miles of pipeline that we constructed with part of these dollars, and you'll see up by Madison, up by the lakes, we have another 5 miles. So the wheeling plan is we sell water to MCWC. You'll see that star in the middle of the map on page 18. That's where MCWC sells water to Big Sioux. Big Sioux uses our pipeline up by Madison to deliver up to 1 million gallons a day to the city. So you are not currently receiving Lewis and Clark molecules, but you are getting the benefit of having access up to 1 million gallons a day of capacity. I was talking earlier about treating water. It's a recipe. We use the same recipe as Minnehaha Community Water Corp. as well as Big Sioux. So it'd be like if all of you followed the same recipe and made a pot of chili. Probably tastes a little different, but about the same. So in other words, even though you're not getting Lewis and Clark molecules, you're still getting a very high quality water.
One quick comment about the wheeling plan. That's formalized by an agreement the city has with Big Sioux Community Water Corporation. So it's that's how we had to formalize it. It's not just it's not part of Lewis and Clark, so there had to be some structure added, and that was negotiated at the time all this was coming together with the legislature and so on. Thank you.
Page 19 is where we get back now to a little bit of the expansion. Whether you're connected or not doesn't matter. Madison can sell some of its water to anyone it wants to. It can you can meter your water at Vermilion, Centerville, Lenox, wherever we have a metering facility, you can meter water. You don't have to be connected. So you're not going to be connected for about 5 years. You could be selling water right now. When I say selling, I'm talking about not selling your birthright, not selling your reserve capacity, but instead metering water and reselling it. I call it the golden eggs versus the golden goose. We're not talking about you selling part of your 1 million gallon birthright, the golden goose. We're talking about metering and selling some of the golden eggs. If that makes sense. And so one of the things that we've talked about with Commissioner Wire that you guys can discuss further is possibly participating in this expansion and creating some revenue by selling some of that water to a member or non-member. Harrisburg, as one example, is a member that is desperate for more water and would be willing to enter into 20-year agreements for more water. We also have non-members like Clay Rural Water down by Vermilion who very much wants to buy water. So these are some discussions taking place that could help offset some of the cost of that expansion. And also it pertains to your current capacity of 1 million gallons. You could be looking at possible agreements to sell for 20-year period or whatever period you want, part of that as well. So we're talking about two different sources of capacity. Your current 1 million gallons of capacity, you could be selling part of that to generate revenue, and you could sell part of that expansion at 552,000. So there's ways for you to offset your costs. I compare it to real estate. If you your wife wanted you to buy a second home, you go, we don't need a second home right now. Well, you might in the future, and so let's rent it out in the short term, and you essentially generate revenues through rentals. That's kind of a different way to look at this selling water concept. But we're not going to get in the weeds too much on that. We did with Commissioner Wire earlier, but you'll have plenty of time to talk about selling water and recouping some of your costs. Brad, Chad, did I cover as much as you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, this is where I was going to chime in about the Goldilocks zone. Because we are connected to 2 other rural waters, that gives us the ability that should, something happen where we start using more water, we have a problem with lake, with the ground aquifer going low, whatever it is, that we would have the ability to get water from other people rather than having to depend solely on the connection to Lewis and Clark. So that's something that as we go through time, this gives us options and gives us a safety net should we decide to go for the expansion, and should we decide to market that. If we still need water, we might be able to get it from the Big Sioux or Minnehaha, depending on how that all works out for them. So we've got options. We've got more than one way to mitigate our risks, and that's something we need to consider as we move forward and look at this expansion and participating in it and possibly selling some of our capacity.
The only other thing I'd add very briefly too, thank you, Brad, is that most of the time, what we're gonna find is that if we're having these discussions, and these discussions have already been happening with other members amongst themselves, is most of the time they want commitments of a significant period of time, probably around 20 years at least, maybe some would even be welcome longer, but, so we would just have to try to determine and make some good estimates as to our growth capacities, and that we have enough assurances with our current plant capacity, that if we could give that up just for a period of time. We would definitely not sell the golden goose, as Troy talks about. It would be some of the golden eggs to do a number of things, some of which would be to offset costs and reduce rates for current citizens and ratepayers, among other things. So, yeah.
So before I go into page 20, which is an entirely different topic, this ends what I would consider the discussion on the expansion and selling water. Any questions on that?
Chad, do you know where we're at on Lewis and Clark for our million? When does that mature?
How much we use now, is that?
No. Oh,
It's forever, right?
Oh, you mean,
We've
how
got
much,
That allotment.
oh, yeah, we'll.
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm
How much to
talking
pay
about
off yet?
that we pay, that we have a loan or,
Oh, I think, I believe it's in 2021 or 22, that our debt service is retired. I don't know, do you know, Brad, off the top of your head? One of those, I mean, it's within a year or two.
Yeah, it's pretty close there. I was thinking it was
okay.
24, but that might be something else on the plant that I'm
Yeah.
thinking of.
So before I go any further, because I don't want to miss this point, do you have enough information to tell me an answer to the straw poll? Of whether you think you'd be interested in participating in the expansion?
I do.
Yeah.
So I got two nods of heads over here.
I would be in favor.
And this is not committing.
Yeah, you're
By
not
you
committing.
saying this, you all, you're not committing this. There'll be subsequent discussions, but
This is the start.
it's useful for Troy and myself, and Brad, as we continue some discussions, and we will and plan to reach out, obviously significantly over the next months, up to a year. Sorry, go ahead, Troy.
So in terms of the straw poll, Mayor, Bob, Mike, thoughts?
As long as
Yeah,
we're
at
not
this point,
committed.
I mean, I would need a lot more data. But just real specific data, but I can talk to Commissioner Wire and get a little more info out of him as well, and Chad, but, at this point, I mean, why wouldn't we? And if it's something that, whether we end up using it, and we can save our own aquifers, or, those, I mean, then that's good. I know it's good, clean water, so if it helps us in our own treatment of the water, that's only gonna help our plant. And ultimately, if we can resell it, then if these other places are jumping up and down wanting it, and if we don't use it but we get it, and or we got it, the question then becomes, how fast can we make up and recoup that $2.4 million? I mean, but again, that's pretty high level. I mean, I'd need a lot more data and information, but straw poll, at this point, I really don't see why we wouldn't.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what I needed for the purpose of the straw poll. Thank you. Going on to page 20 then, the final true-up. That's a term we use quite a bit, and all it is once the system is completed, which is roughly 10 years, is to determine whether each member paid what they were supposed to pay. Because that $2 million you paid in was based on an estimate of how much it was going to take to complete the system. And right now, we have 18 members who are paid up. They have paid in what they were supposed to. We have Beersford and Sioux Falls that still owe some dollars, but they have plans in the next 3-4 years to pay that off. Madison did pay the correct amount. You do have a credit of about $76,000, just under $76,000. And that is strictly from the interest that was earned. Once the members paid in all their money, we just didn't let it sit in a zero interest account. We invested it until we needed to spend it on construction. So through the years, we earned quite a bit of interest on the dollars you guys paid. 76,000 is your share of the interest that was earned. We just did it proportionally based on everybody. So you didn't overpay, you paid the correct amount, but this is what you earn in terms of interest. So I want to forewarn you that there could be a scenario where the board may decide to issue a small capital call. And what I mean by that is that it's the goal of Lewis and Clark board and staff to maximize our federal dollars. So we have a ceiling. Right now our ceiling, it's a remaining 100 and, if you flip over to the bottom of page 22, the remaining federal cost share is 166.8 million, that last bullet point. It's the goal of everyone to maximize those dollars. We don't want to leave money on the table. So let's say hypothetically, we get to the end of the project and we have 2 million of federal dollars left, but we have a project that costs 3 million. What do? You don't want to waste that 2 million. So there could be a scenario where the board says, okay, to utilize this last 2 million, we're going to ask the members to chip in that last million to fully maximize their dollars. That would be the only scenario where there would be a capital call where we come back and say, you need to chip in X amount of dollars to maximize the federal funding. So you're paid up, but I don't want 10 years from now someone to say, you told me we were paid up. Why do we have to pay in more money? That would be one scenario. Does that make sense, or do you want me to elaborate on that? Okay.
That would be certainly something that would be brought to the city commission's attention well in advance of any, probably at years in advance of when that would come forth. So there would be time to budget and plan accordingly. Not anticipated at this time, but it could happen.
And then I'm sure the board would try to figure out a way for the members to use that credit toward your share. We'd have to figure out how to do that, but that might come into play. I wrote a 2.5-page memo on the history of the final true-up. The only thing more painful than reading that memo is having written it. But Chad has copies if you want.
They've been forwarded.
Okay, so did anyone read that? No. It's a painful history, but it's a good history, and we didn't want to lose that, so I was asked to write that. All right, page 21 is just a history of the federal funding to date. You can see we went through some dry spells there where we were getting 2 million, 4 million, 5 million. That's why we started pursuing what we're calling federal funding advances. I've used that term tonight earlier. A federal funding advance is a zero-interest, unsecured loan that will be paid back at an unknown point in time. 0% interest, pay it back at an unknown point in time. And that's because the states knew how critical important it was to get this project done. So they essentially advanced us dollars that we'll pay back with future federal funding. There you can see again that Madison paid the $2 million. At one point, just a quick history, Madison originally had 1 million gallons. After authorization, it reserved another 500,000 gallons. And for that 500,000, you had to pay 100% of the cost of the incremental cost, to upsize the system. After paying for that a couple years, Madison decided to let that go because it was so expensive compared to your 1 million gallon. Ironically, we're back in the same boat here. Is you're essentially talking about getting 552,000 back. But just wanted to give you a little history. At one point, Madison did have 1.5 million gallons, but gave up that extra water, which other members quickly gobbled up. So if you think I'm bluffing that your 552 would be gobbled up, it was already gobbled up one other time. Each year you pay lobbying fees. Madison's cost in FY20 was $3,800. It's the same amount for FY21. Through FY20, the government has appropriated 64% of their cost share, just under $300 million. And again, they have a remaining cost share of $166.8 million, and that's indexed annually for inflation. Federal funding advances, Minnesota approved just over 44 million, South Dakota again 8.7, Iowa 7 million. We're going back to Des Moines this year to try to secure another federal funding advance. Once all the members are connected, we're going to start repaying the states. Once everyone's connected, that does not mean the project's done. One of the misnomers of Lewis and Clark is once we're all connected, we're just done. Once everyone's connected, we have to expand the treatment plant. We had to add more wells and pumps. And I'm not talking about the expansion to 60 million gallons. I'm talking just to get to 45 million gallons, like that fifth solids contact basin. What the board has agreed so that the states wouldn't be last in line is once everyone's connected, we're going to repay the states before completing that remaining work. So you'll see there's an estimated $33 million of work left that we need to complete once the states are repaid. That way, the states weren't at the end of the line in terms of reimbursement. So once you're connected, I want to emphasize there might be times in August, for example, where you can't access 1 million gallons of water because we don't have all the infrastructure completed. You might be limited at times to say 900,000. I'm just making up numbers. So I want to emphasize once you're connected doesn't mean you're guaranteed the 1 million day in and day out until we actually complete the system. Water rates, Lewis and Clark board sets the price. We're a nonprofit, and so ironically, the people buying the water are the ones setting the price. So you know they're not going to overcharge themselves for water. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into the capacity charge and water rate, but we essentially have a component that covers the fixed cost and then variable cost. Your capacity charge is based on how much you've reserved. So in Madison's case, when they're connected, you'll pay 44 cents per 1,000 gallons for your reserve capacity, whether you use a drop of water or not. So it's just like a meter charge, if you will. An effective rate at the last bullet point, page 24, is simply dividing a member's total charge per month divided by the gallons purchased.
One comment on that slide, if I may, that the capacity charge and the water rate, long story short, is they're governed by an agreement that all the members sign. Is that they have to be charged that way, and then the rate itself is what's determined by the board on an annual basis to cover expenses and so on. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to skip over page 25 because that talks about selling water, and Chad can get in the weeds a little more. Page 26 this gives the whole year. We just finished our fiscal year, so from October 1 of 19 to September 30th, this is all the connected members' effective rates. And you'll see they're all over the board. Everyone pays the same for water, but the more water you purchase, the lower your effective rate. And so you'll see Rock County Rural Water, they hit the lowest. $1.04 is as low as it'll go last year. This year, $1.05 is the lowest it'll go. But you'll see some members like Centerville weren't able to use as much as of their water. And what you generally see is the difference between sole source members and blenders. A sole source member is someone who strictly relies on Lewis and Clark for their water. Our sole source members reserved a lot more on a proportional basis than the blenders because they knew this is their one shot. And so they can't use as much of it, whereas the blenders, like Laverne is a blender, Sioux Falls is a blender, they use more of their percentage. But anyway, it just gives you an idea the effective rate for the various members.
If I may make one comment about that. You can see Minnehaha CWC Community Water System there. Just a brief side note, the wheeling plan, we are able to, our allocation we're getting to that wheeling plan is under Minnehaha Community Water System allocation. And so that lowers their effective rate essentially by the water we use and Big Sioux uses. And that was kudos to NCWC and their willingness to cooperate and collaborate with us for that wheeling plan agreement because it benefits everybody. It was really a win-win-win all the way around with that. I just want to point that out very briefly. Our effective rate, if we are connected, it's higher, like as Troy had mentioned, with the water, capacity charge, because we only take about 175 to 200,000 gallons a month right now, or excuse me, a day. We will pay a higher effective rate once we're fully connected on our own. And therein is part of the reason that we can lower that effective rate if we have the opportunity to sell water for a period of time, 20 years, whatever it may be, to another entity. So that's just one way to experience savings. So in other words, you look at that Centerville and the Lennox, I mean, we will be probably at least up in that rate if we're not able to either use more water ourselves or sell it to somebody else.
You'll see on the bottom of that slide 27, you see our capacity charge was 43 cents per 1,000 gallons. If you go to page 28, assuming,
Must just be the figure.
oh, anyway, sorry. The new capacity charge effective October 1 is 44 cents. So it went up 1 cent. The water rate is unchanged. But what slide 27 shows you is just the 1 month snapshot. So page 26 is 1 year's worth of averages. Page 27 is just the snapshot from September of 20. Lastly, kudos to Madison, your visionary leaders that signed up for Lewis and Clark. What an incredible asset that you have. And what you're talking about is how you can even generate revenue off this asset. But there are a lot of members, I should say a lot of previous members of Lewis and Clark that dropped out. We had at one time from 1990 to 93, we had like 50 members of Lewis and Clark. And in 93, the rubber met the road, and that's when the agreements were signed and money had to be paid. A lot of people dropped out, a lot of members. Brandon dropped out, Canton, Big Sioux, Kingbrook, Clay Rural Water, TM Rural Water are now clamoring for additional water sources. So kudos to you guys for sticking with it, and it's certainly going to pay off for you. The light is at the end of the tunnel. I've been here, I've been with Lewis Clark 18 years. I remember being here, and I couldn't tell you what decade you were going to get water. I'm pleased to tell you that the light is at the end of the tunnel, and that's very exciting. The rest of the presentation is just pictures for you to peruse at, so that really concludes my presentation.
Well, comment, well, if I may, while Troy's looking at that too, the kudos to the folks that preceded you and me and Brad and everybody. I really truly believe it was a tremendous decision that they made. You know, we have vulnerabilities with our well field. We had the clear well collapse not so long ago. We've dealt with different contamination issues that we've had to sort through over the years. That with this asset, it is such a value for the city of Madison. I think you'd be hard pressed to find another more valuable asset that we have owned. So that's all I have.
Thank you for your time. I have a little party gift for you here. Chad, if you would help me.
Thanks for the information.
You bet. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
And Chuck,
Exit through twice, actually.
yeah, Chuck, you've written so many stories about Lewis and Clark. There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Troy.
And Mike will get you one. I don't know who gets Mike's.
No worries. Thank you, Troy. I appreciate all your work for the past 18 years, not just Madison, but it's huge for this whole Midwest region. You guys keep up the good work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, one.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we will move down to the second item under new business. Tracy, you want to bring us up to speed on authorize the mayor to sign consultant contract Dakota State University intramural coordinator?
Yes, Jen has been working with Stacy, Sarah, and James regarding this. You'll notice it is an annual contract running from July till June. However, with the transition and the hiring of the new rec coordinator up at the community center, we decided to wait until that position was hired, which is now why you are seeing it at this time. We did raise the payment amount from 25,000 to 28,000 this year, just to be sure.
Okay. Do I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign consultant contract Dakota State University intramural coordinator?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments, discussion? Not hearing any. Tracy, you want to take the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Wire?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Phil?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner?
Aye.
Mayor Denner?
Aye. Item 3, Brad, will you bring us up to speed on authorize the mayor to sign letter of acceptance Banner Association, Inc., well house number 1 replacement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You should have in your packet a letter from Banner and then also a scope of services agreement. And what this is well house number 1 has basically a sinkhole underneath it, and we've worked on it a couple times to try to fix it. And at this point, we'd like to change that location. It sits in a low spot down there, and it's also one of those that's susceptible to flooding. And we'd like to move that to a new location, elevate it up, and make it flood-proof for the 100-year flood event. And this is all part of this process to fix that well house. The cost for this, if you add everything together with geotechnical, is $52,500 for the engineering. Are there any questions on the proposed plans, or
Where's the well house at, Brad?
if you go down to where the water treatment plant is,
Yep.
and you got the ground storage tank
Yep.
and the Lewis and Clark building, it's just basically straight south of that, just a little bit east, and it's right in the bottom.
Okay.
Right in the very bottom. And it's had some water damage over the years, and like I say, it's got a sinkhole underneath it that we filled twice now, and we'd just like to just get that out of there.
Okay.
And then move it to, like I say, the new location and fix it up, so.
Do I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign letter of acceptance Banner Association, Inc., well house 1 replacement?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Not hearing any. Tracy, will you take roll call vote?
Commissioner Wire?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Phil?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner?
Aye.
Mayor Denner?
Aye. Item 4. This one's also yours, Brad. Authorize the mayor to sign confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, Unismart Court Meter Data Management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You should have in your packet, it's not very well titled, but it's just a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, typically in the industry called an NDA. This is for Utilismart, who will be doing the meter data management for the AMI project. They will take the information from the meters, put it into a format that we can utilize to analyze how heavily loaded our transformers are, all these different types of things. They'll be communicating with the billing system, and they'll also be communicating with the prepaid system. So this is an integral part of the whole AMI system. What this says is that we can't disclose any of their trade secrets to any third party and any member of the city. So the city is basically saying that the city as a whole, all of its employees will not disclose trade secrets to any third party. And this is pretty common in this business. And there'll be other non-disclosure agreements that are included in the agreements that are coming forward for the other vendors that we're using. But they're encapsulated in their agreement, not as a standalone. This is a standalone. So that's why you're seeing this one first. I did speak with our attorney, Mr. Jenks, and he said that this is a standard non-disclosure agreement, and there was nothing in it that he saw was of issue.
Do I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, Unisor Corporation meter data management.
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? You said this was going to be for what section of it that they were doing prepaid?
Well, this is kind of like the, it's almost like a server for a computer system in a lot of ways, where you have information coming from the metering system comes into it,
Yep.
and then it sends it out to the different users. And one of them will be our billing system, the CIS for Tyler. Another one would be the prepaid metering system that we're going to have. So people can prepay for their electric service. They have to have the information of how much they're using every day. So that'll come from the meters, go through the MDM, and then go back out to the prepay customer and tell them how much they've got to their system. And then they'll know when they're running out and when they have to put more money into their system, into their account, if you will, so they can continue to use our electricity. So this is kind of that server that takes all that information and sends it out to the different people, or a hub, whichever way you want to look at it from a network perspective. But it houses all the data. And then it does more than that on the backside for us, but that's primarily what it does that the
Right.
customer will see.
So see no problem with them working with Tyler.
No.
Okay. Any further comments or discussion? Not hearing any. Tracy, will you take roll call vote?
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner,
Aye.
Mayor Denner.
Aye. Item 5 is also Brad. Approved proposal for design service, Design Art Group, new water building.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for a new location, a new building. We went through the process a year ago to look at, or earlier this year actually, to look at rebuilding the existing building that's there. And the cost of that was substantially higher than what it's probably worth, arguably, being an older building. The mayor came to me and said, well, let's find out what it would cost to build a new steel building, erect a brand new steel frame building, similar to the building that we have currently at that we're housing the municipal utilities offices in. And so I went and talked to a couple of contractors. They gave me a number that was reasonable. And so the idea was to move forward with going out to plans, go out to bid to see if we can get it as reasonable as what they say. The issue with that is that you have to spend some money to do that, and unfortunately that's, in this case, the $23,300 for engineering to get the plans put together to get the bids in. One way that we're looking at trying to save some money is, you see there's an optional $7,200. I did talk with Chad about that, being this is a small project, that his staff could do the surveying and help us out on that part of it. So we're looking to save some of that money by doing that work in-house.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the proposal for design service, Design Art Group, new water building?
I'll make a motion we deny that, because I think this is more of a want than it is a need. I don't think we need, right now with what we got going on the table here with the money exchanging, I don't think we need to go through with this new water building.
I got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Not hearing any. That motion fails. Do I have a motion to approve the proposal for the design service, Design Art Group, new water building?
I'll make a motion to approve the new design work for the water building.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion?
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
find this ironic, because I sat here when the city decided to buy the East River property. So I did a little investigating, and the particular pole shed that we're talking now is inadequate, was adequate at the time. I was poo-pooed that it was unfit to remodel. And now you want to turn around and build another building, but prior to this, that building was fine. And that was one of the impetus to buy East River's building, or property. Now all of a sudden this building isn't any good. We knew it wasn't any good when we bought it. You had to do a little research. Talk to the owner. East River owned it.
Who says it isn't any good?
Huh?
Who says it isn't any good?
You were the guy that said that it was, I sat right here and you sat right up there, and I said it's unfit to remodel, and you said, whoa, yes it is.
It's too expensive to remodel.
Well,
There's a difference.
I would have thought as a department head that you would have figured that out and done the math before we paid the price to East River.
So we shouldn't have bought the entire property because that building wasn't good enough to remodel. We need to stop this discussion here, and we can talk about it some other place at some other time, but I don't believe that.
Why can't we talk about it in a public forum?
We can talk about it, but I'm telling you that that's not a reason to not buy the entire property.
I'm not saying it is.
You
I'm
just
saying
did.
this is part of our problem. The residents take second seat.
No.
The taxpayers take second seat, and it's getting kind of old.
So, I have a question for you, Brad. On these design services, that's going to come out of what budget?
Typically, we would take it out of professional services. Unfortunately, this year, because we put our improvements in professional services rather than under improvements, our professional services budget is used up, which makes it difficult to do professional services under professional services. So now we want to take professional services and put them under improvements, which seems kind of backwards, but that's what we're going to have to do, which is going to limit the amount of money we're going to be able to spend on the building.
So you're saying take this out of where? The $100,000 we have set aside to remodel the other building?
There's 200 total, 100 this year, 100 next year. But that's going to limit things because on our bookkeeping, we decide to take the improvements to the system and put them under professional services. And now we're going to take professional services and put them underneath the improvements because it's the way we've been doing things, and it makes it more difficult to try to manage the money.
It is part of the new building. I mean, if I come to you and ask you, what is this building going to cost? Hopefully I'll get a price that includes design to the last screw we put in. Correct?
Now the budget that we're talking about putting it into is for improvements. Okay. So we do this just like we did last time. We did this engineering, and we didn't build the building. That engineering came out of improvements. There's no improvements to put it against. So engineering should come out of professional services. Improvements should come out of improvements, and we should keep those separated. But right now, I don't have the ability to put it in professional services because we used all that up for improvements on the system. When we hire anybody to do improvements outside of the upgrade project, they get billed to professional services, and that takes up our professional services budget. And we did the pieces of wire that were bad, that were open concentric, we did those for replacement this year. We did like 3 different places down by, there's 2 or 3 of them out by our office. There's another one over by the Bethel, and there's one more, where was it? There's one more out there by the airport. And we replaced all these pieces, and we ended up exceeding our budget for professional services.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Moving it wrong, instead of jockeying money around from one account to another account, you're looking at 2021 budget, is this correct?
No,
The new
We're-
budget?
we're talking about
20
this
and-
year's budget.
The year we are just finishing up.
Right.
Yes.
We set aside 100,000 to remodel the
Okay.
the building that Mr. Johnson was talking about. It came to us, we
About
went,
140, 50, I remember that. I remember.
we came and the bid was like 200 and some,
Yeah.
which was over the budget. So we scrapped that at that point.
Ms. Mayor, I guess right now, just hearing the conversation, I guess, right now, I guess I'd take a big, deep breath and not go forward with this. Let's evaluate where we want to go, because you're looking at a lot of different things coming down the line. We're looking at a lot of expenditure coming to this city from the RD. I know it's a good loan, stuff like this. Construction phases all over the place. I realize, we want to protect our equipment, etc. But maybe we need to have a breath of fresh air for a while. Kick back, relax, instead of trying to spend ourselves into a corner. Let's turn around and do a little thing called saving money for a change, for a situation. Now, granted, there's some surpluses in the area. But what's wrong with the surplus? I don't know. I wish I had more. But I guess this, right now, in my opinion, sit back, take a deep breath, relax, don't pass this. I think you'd probably get a big applause from the community on this. Every conversation that has been here has basically been expenditure. Spend, spend, spend. Not just only in this administration, but prior administrations. And the first time I actually heard something positive was Lewis and Clark said, hey, we could sell some water to somebody else and make a little bit of money. That was refreshing for a change. So I guess my suggestion, sit back, kick back, relax. Just think about it. 1 year is not going to make a big difference. Construction right now, stuff like that, I know it's going up. I know you can probably buy a little bit cheaper or do some things cheaper now than a year from now, but sometimes with all the COVID-19, lumber prices are awful high, and I know this is all coming into a construction eventually. Kick back, won't hurt.
Is there any further comments?
Mike, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just stand by my prior statement that building, that pole shed was adequate to be remodeled. And I'm thinking now it isn't. It was known that it was not fit at the time. And I made that known to the commission at the time.
And I wasn't sitting here at that
No,
time.
I know.
And I'm looking at the long term, if it's gonna cost us more to remodel it than to put a shed up, that's where I struggle a little bit in this, that's all. But I appreciate, you being open about it. And like I said, I wasn't here at the time on that.
No, I understand.
The dollars are still the dollars.
Correct.
If we remodel
Right.
or build new.
I have one other question. Do we have any ballpark idea what this building's gonna cost? That'd be my first question. The second question is, what are we gonna use it for? What seems so inadequate now that we need a new building?
What will be stored in this, Brad?
Well, they've got right now they're in a small little shoebox of a building. They've got to back vehicles in one at a time, park it, jockey it back and forth, get there, get the next one, jockey it back and forth and get there. And then two of the pickups got to sit outside, or in the cold storage, or inside, but they're under roof, but they're outside basically. And if you want to get something out, you got to pull everything back out, jockey stuff around and get stuff pulled out. They're in a small area. It's not a shop per se. I mean, it's a parking area that they can barely walk around when they get all the vehicles in there. The mayor's been in it, he's looked at it. It's not a good situation for a long-term, use for a shop. I mean, it's not the way you want it. It's got one main door, so everything's got to go in and out that one main door. You can't take a separate door and go out with a different piece of equipment. So that's probably the biggest drawback to the current location.
We can't proceed any further without this bid, correct? This
is the
bid to get the
Yes.
design of what it would cost us to build this.
The problem is that, we're gonna be with this engineering coming out of here without supplementing the budget somewhere down the road. We're probably not gonna be able to build the building because of the cost of the engineering coming out of this, because the professional services is used up, which I figured out today. After doing some inquiry, we got the numbers for the professional services. My initial intent was to take the engineering out of professional services, have the full amount of the budget to build the building. So it's gonna be tight without supplementing the budget to get this built.
All I'm saying is that, maybe it's not a crisis. I mean, I jockey things in and out of my shop. I've got 2 doors and I still have to jockey stuff. I mean, if we want to live in a palace, fine. But is it adequate? And I'm not looking for the city guys to get by with just piecemealing stuff around, because I know how that is. But do we really need it? I mean, he's talking about a shop. Well, we got a city shop if they need to work on something. That goes in the heated part. Good heavens, how many of your vehicles sit in a garage that isn't heated? That's not a crisis in my book. Just be glad that you don't have to scrape the windows in the morning.
My pickup sits outside, has for 3 years.
So Brad, even if we proceed with this, we're still gonna have to supplement the budget, that's what you're telling me.
It looks, because the way we've used up the professional services this year.
Yep.
Are you back? Are you back, Mike?
I heard him.
You're rad. There we go. Are you back, Mike?
I am.
Sorry about that.
Power failure.
Tracy's
It
battery.
always helps to have them plugged in,
Yep. We're still on the water.
or shorter meetings.
Yep. We're still on that new water building. We have been discussing it. I guess after knowing that now, that we are probably going to have to surplus it even after using this year's 100 and next year's 100, which I don't really see how we can do that using one year's budget over in the next, because we're not going to spend it all. We're not going to spend all 100,000 this year, are we?
Depends on when we get the plans done and get the building ordered.
Okay. But now hearing that we may have to supplement it because we have to take these out of improvements.
Is it a finance issue with how things are being coded, or?
In my opinion, yes.
It's different than what we've done in the past, or?
It's basically the same as what we've done in the past.
Okay.
It's different than how I perceive it should be.
Okay.
We approved the design. Does
The
it mean
desi-
we have to proceed this year right away with this, or, I mean, is there?
Well, if you don't spend the 100 at the end of the year, you won't have that. If you spend, let's say we spend 24,000 out of the 100, and we don't proceed with it till next year, if we don't get the building ordered till next year, we'll lose that $75,000
Of authorization.
of
The
authorization.
cash will still be there, but
Well, just
But-
be-
It just kind of rolled to the next, it'll come into the next budget, but we'd have to reauthorize it.
We would have to reauthorize it.
It would still be there, the cash would be there, that's not gonna go away.
just because it's in the budget, we don't have to spend it.
I understand that.
I have one more question. Do we have an idea, we've gotta have an idea of what size building we're talking? We can do cost per foot. We do have an idea what it's gonna cost. I've asked that 3 times now and I don't get an answer.
it's $196,000.
Okay, thank you.
Per square foot,
No,
40-ish.
4,800.
Mhm.
Any further comments, discussion?
Now, does that include the $196,000? Is that just for the building and the construction of the building?
Yes.
And then you've already got $100,000, so you're gonna have to supplement that budget anyway. How much you gonna spend for this survey? 20-some thousand?
It's 23.3.
You have to have.
So you're gonna have to supplement next year's budget anyway, or somehow, right?
Right, and when I put this on the agenda, I didn't have the numbers for the professional services. We had 93,000 in the budget, and we've overexpended that with the upgrades this year.
Like your utility upgrades, your electrical.
Right, we
upgrades.
put wire in the ground, and that went to professional services.
Which it should be.
It should be an improvement. It's an improvement to the system, it's part of the plant, and we can capitalize it. But it's a long story, it's a different way of looking at how you use the budget and separate things out. Because if I asked you how much we spend on engineering, you'd have no way to tell me because it's not in professional services. It's scattered throughout the budget in 8 different places.
Yep. Okay.
Can I make a motion to table or not?
We got a motion on, we got a motion to approve it. We can
Should rescind it.
we can rescind it, or we can take a vote, and if it goes down, you can make a motion to table it,
Or just vote it down and it's done.
or vote it down and it's done. So is there any further comments or discussion? We got a motion on the floor to approve proposal for design service, design art group, new water building.
If we wanted to, we could table this as well.
That's,
We
and
can
that's,
just, you would have, Dre could amend the motion.
Yeah.
It's a simple process.
I think I'd like to amend the motion to table next week, 2 weeks. What do you guys think?
it's up to you, I mean,
Let's
I think,
let's go 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
because I would like to have a conversation in regards to improvements versus.
Right. This
So
is all
13th would be the
19th?
19th.
19.
until the 19th.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll second the motion to table us till the 19th of October, so we can gather more information.
okay. Any comments on tabling it?
I haven't done.
Okay. Tracy, will you take roll call?
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Wallner,
Aye.
Mayor Denner.
Aye. Okay. Item 6. Hopefully everybody, you guys should have received the new, approving the employee COVID-19 guidelines. Mike, did you get that? I think.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got Kristen on line here. Did you want to make any comments, Kristen, on this?
Yes, I would just like to bring forth, I again some of the changes from the last flow chart with the guidelines set forth. Making sure that everyone is fully aware that we are changing the 14 days to be 10. This can vary based on when or if the symptoms have their first showing of the symptoms of when the employee would. And what I mean by that is, at any point in time, we can have an employee experience symptoms from day 2 to day 14. So somebody may get a symptom on day 2, but somebody else may get a symptom on day 9, which then their 10 days would start then from when their symptoms, their 10 days would restart from when their symptoms were showing if they haven't been tested yet. So we itemize out more of the symptoms of COVID in this flow chart. Before they weren't all necessarily itemized out, I felt that was very important. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on was the employee recommendations and expectations of communicating to who and when they need to employ or when they need to communicate. That is very, very important to keep us all safe and to keep our employees safe. I can't stress enough how important this is just for the employee aspect. We all want them to be healthy throughout this process as well. So, did anyone have any questions?
I did. Do I have a motion to approve employee COVID-19 guidelines?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
just a minute. After we talked about this, both Kristen and I had a conversation with our city attorney. He also wanted to let us know that this isn't cut and dry. I mean, this isn't black and white. So he advised us, and I want everybody to know the third line, the city can use their discretion on a case-by-case basis based on the CDC guidelines. So if we can get the employee back to work sooner, we would, but we got to make sure it's safe for everybody.
Completely agree.
Mike, did you want to?
Well, I'm just all I have a question is so like if you're around somebody that's tested positive, and you disclose this, then do you go into your 10 days, or can you come to work and be isolated because you're not showing any symptoms after 3 days, or are we going to test the people?
You can't test out of it.
And have them, and then if they test negative in 3 days, they can come back to work, or what? Because I'm going to be honest, there's employees already saying that if the state health doesn't call them and say that they've been exposed, they're not going to tell anybody because they've already been through their 14 days. So now they're burning their sick time when they're not showing any symptoms in return. So they're burning their sick time. So when they do get this, everybody's going to get it probably sooner or later. They're going to have to, and some people don't have that sick time balance. So, I mean, there's a fine line between being a department head of where do we start, if we can self-isolate these people that if they're not around anybody and they haven't showed symptoms for 3 days. I mean, I want to know when we can tell our employees to come back to work. I mean, and I haven't seen this chart or anything else. I'm just saying.
And that's why we put the discretion in there case by case.
Yeah, and I understand there's not anything that fits because an office employee to a shop, a person that's outside. I understand that.
But the employees have to be responsible for their actions. If they decide, if they get exposed and use up their 14 days and get paid for it, and then they choose to go out and get exposed again because they want to go to some function, they have to understand that's on them. And if they don't have sick leave or vacation, I can't help.
But that's the thing, but the thing is you stay at home and not work, you know, I'm just saying.
I would err on
Shelter yourself,
caution.
because like, I mean, I'll be honest, I can't even talk about it because it's an employee, but I'm just saying, the first time and the second time, now, in neither time, I'll be honest, the people that she was exposed to that was positive were out in public within 5 days, and she's sitting at home and can't come to work for 14 days.
Yeah, because
But-
it's the 10 days from the onset of the
But
symptoms. so-
we were following our guidelines at that time.
I mean,
If they were exposed,
And here's the biggest thing, is there's no playbook for this.
I
Right.
And we're trying, and it's changing, it changes, it's so fluid, it changes on a rapid rate. And I'm dealing with it day in and day out. And sometimes we're putting kids out 14 days, and we have to be the keeper of what's 6 feet and what's not 6 feet.
I understand that.
And we're, you know, that's the hard part with this, is there is no right or wrong answer, and 9 times out of 10, we're wrong. And, you know, we're trying to make sure that we keep the employees safe. It's gonna come back to, that's exactly why we tell the employees to wear masks in the vehicles together. Because if you're in a mask, odds of you being in close contact, because you're not gonna be in that vehicle more than 15 minutes, are 0. So that's why we're encouraging, wear the masks when you're in closed environments, because if you're in a mask and you're in the car for 8 minutes, you're not deemed a close contact by the Department of Health. So there's a reason why we are pushing some of these things, to make sure that we do keep our employees on you know, working day in and day out.
I understand that.
And
I understand where you're at, and
decisions, but also,
but we have to be responsible as human beings right now.
I mean,
You know, you gotta remember that your meal's being put on your table by your job, and if you wanna, there's other things that are happening, you wanna do them, I get it. But sometimes you gotta pick and choose right now, unfortunately, and that's the hard decision.
so, now this is the thing, is an employee gonna be disciplined if they've been around a positive, but they haven't been contacted by the South Dakota Department?
No, I think they just have to be responsible. And here, you know, here's how we handle it with the kids. If we know that they've come in contact, we ask the kids if they, let's say somebody's being tested, we just ask them to monitor themselves. If that person comes back positive and the Department of Health deems them a close contact, then that's a whole other issue. And I think that's really what this flow chart says.
But I'm just asking, when do you stay home, and when do you come to work?
When you stay home when you show symptoms,
Or
or you're deemed a close contact by the Department of Health.
when the Department of Health contacts?
That's how we are doing it.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Correct.
Mike,
Okay, yeah?
if I may, so what's happening though is, what I've been dealing with is, the Department of Health isn't necessarily contacting people that are in a close contact, because the people that have tested positive are not sharing that information. So I understand where you're coming from, but those people that test positive, when they don't share the close contact information for the Department of Health to reach out because they don't want to, that hinders the ability for some of this lack of communication and frustration. So that's why we are expecting and relying on the employees to be upfront with us as an employer, and we can work with them on a case-by-case basis, because some of this close contact, as we talk through things, every situation is different.
that's right.
And I
Just like, I'm gonna take you as one of your employees as an example. They not showing signs, they've been in close contact, but they're out mowing by themselves. We could probably take a look at that versus someone else that's sitting in an office.
Correct.
So
And I
that's
agree
why,
100%.
that's why we put this discretion, that's why Mr. Jinks wanted us to put that discretion in there. So
I just
we
wanted some
have,
clarification.
I mean,
Right.
here, hypothetically, we could play this game. Your wife gets it, okay? You show no signs, you technically could be off of work 24 days.
14.
No,
Oh.
technically 24, because their 14 days don't start counting until the 10th day is over that person, if they're a close contact in a house.
And I understand that.
So, I mean, there's a lot of parameters that run in this, and that's, I think
I'm
that,
good
that,
as long as if we can try to self-isolate them and they can come to work. Yes, I mean, we got work to do and
Yep,
stuff.
I fully get that, and that's, I think that's why we have the statement at the bottom, it provides
That's
us
right.
flexibility as a commission and an HR department to make sure that we can cover all of our bases.
Yep.
We're not here to make people not work,
No.
believe me.
We want them here.
But we also need to make sure that everybody stays
I
safe,
understand.
because it affects everybody differently.
We want to make sure everybody's healthy.
Yes,
Yep.
correct. Especially as we're going into cold and flu season.
Yes.
It's gonna mask itself differently, probably. So, does that help, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
I probably just muddied the waters even more.
I think this guidelines, we were still following the other guidelines.
So are the new guidelines gonna be effective as of right now?
As soon as we approve it.
As soon as we approve it.
All right.
So, okay. Is there any other comments or discussion?
Kristen, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. I will communicate to the department head,
Yep.
and I will call, and make some calls this evening, if this is approved, and this is our new policy, and we will move forward from there. Lots of education on our side.
Yeah,
but
and
we'll get there.
And I appreciate the hard work that Kristen did put into this, because she was calling other city governments and really did a lot of work, and also our mayor, to make sure that it is fluid and it is right, and that's the big piece, so.
So you will get this new flow chart out to the new, to department heads, and they need to, get it out to the employees?
Yes, yep,
Okay. You think we should do the same thing we did last time, put it in, the next check?
as a handout, I can do that.
We will take care of that. We'll get you some help on that. So it will go to department heads if it's approved. Go to department heads. They need to get it out to the employees. And then next payroll will put this in their checks, just like we did before. Any other comments or discussion? Not hearing any. Do you want to take roll call?
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Phil,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner.
Did you lose
We
it?
lost
Did you
him.
leave?
Probably didn't plug his computer in.
Mayor Denner,
Aye. Any updates on COVID-19?
Nope.
We-
Plugging away.
Yeah. Public comments. Do we have any? Nope. Announcements. We got change in meeting dates from the October 12th to October 13th. Any other announcements? Not seeing anything on exec session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you and have a good evening.